You're listening to The Resilient Animal. I'm Annie Peterson, Doctor of Education with a Master's in Mental Health Recovery and Trauma-Informed Care. This podcast is an exploration of how helping other living beings can benefit mental health and what makes us all resilient animals. In this conversation, I speak with Susan Nowicke, founder of the nonprofit reptile animal sanctuary EcoVivarium. Susan shares her journey on how she started working with animals and the nonprofit's unique operations. She sheds light on the adoption process to ensure that the animals are getting a lifetime family, and also the challenging aspect of running a sanctuary that works with animals that have arrived in extremely poor health. So hello everybody, this is Annie with The Resilient Animal, and today we are meeting with Susan Nowicke, the founder of EcoVivarium. And for those of you who are Animal Bond Academy fans, you can watch those episodes on YouTube, but we did a 2-part feature with Susan and EcoVivarium. And she's also done a number of news segments with us that have been very exciting. So we're so happy to talk with you, Susan. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Good. It's pouring rain again. If anybody knows about the floods who's listening, San Diego has been getting clobbered. So Susan, I just wanted to ask you, let's just go ahead and start with why you started working with animals and what is so unique about EcoVivarium.
Well, I started working with animals because I was always an animal kid, from the time I could walk. Any animals I could scoop up, I brought them in the house. And I had very tolerant parents. And that passion for the animals grew. At one point, I thought about going into veterinary medicine. Then I found out you have to euthanize animals, and I decided I couldn't do that. So took a different tact and went into business. And animals, though, were always a part of my life. They've always been a part of my family. And I've seen what they can do and how they impact lives. And especially once I had kids of my own, especially special needs kids, the bond that they form with the animals and the impact the animals have on their lives. For my youngest daughter, it was how she learned. She had epilepsy, and every time she'd have big seizure clusters, it would wipe out everything she had learned because it was in that same part of her brain as where she stored the information she was learning. And so we had to find a way for her to learn where it would be someplace else in the brain. And we found contextual learning was that tool. So anything I could teach in context, she could learn and retain. And so the animals became that vehicle for teaching everything from phonics, all the way through math and social studies, all of it. She learned through the animals. And that was her connection. And being part of the homeschool community, we had other families that saw what was happening with her and said, "Oh, can we join you when you're doing this?" And we were volunteering with the Herpetological Society in San Diego that I became president of for many years. And so we started doing outreach with it and impacting more and more people. The society's mission was not designed for the extensive rescue and everything that I envisioned. And so we went off and we started EcoVivarium back in 2009. Okay.
And I remember, I think one of the first times we spoke, I asked, what does EcoVivarium mean? And you told me that you had made it up.
Yes. It's a word I made up and actually trademarked. And it's a goal we're still working towards. But the vision we have for Eco is that when we have our own permanent property that we're working towards now in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have our own facility, not be renting, a makeshift medical building for a museum. And we will be able to build living habitats that mimic the animal's natural environment and provide spacious, naturalistic habitats for them. And that's the vivarium part. The eco part, of course, is the education side of things and teaching people the role the animals we work with play in nature and why they're vital, because so many people are fearful of bugs and, spiders and things that go bump in the night. And this is a way to bridge that fear. We're working with elementary schools here in Escondido this year in a huge program, and we work with the kids for 8 weeks. And literally the other night with my son, I ran into a kid from the first elementary we were at, and he's, "You were my teacher with the reptiles. Why did you stop teaching me?" I learned so much. And I remember he was one of the kids that the first day we brought animals in, he was terrified of them. He comes from a culture where you see those animals, you kill them. They're bad. And he has a whole different perspective. And he was sharing it with all the other kids in the playground. And you see the difference it makes in the kids. It empowers them to appreciate an element of nature that might be outside their family or outside their culture. And that changes the whole standing of where those animals are long-term in the world, because the reptiles, amphibians, and the bugs are being wiped out faster than any other species. And much of it is habitat loss. And so it's bringing up that next generation that understands the environmental impact that we're having and why we can't wipe these animals out, what it'll do to us long term. And so it empowers these kids in a way that nothing else I've found can do.
And one thing I really love about your organization is that when people think of animal rescue, animal sanctuary, they think, of course, dogs and cats. And that's what makes EcoVivarium so unique, is that a lot of people have reptiles that
Yes.
They're not those throwaway animals that you were talking about. So one thing I'm really impressed with how your organization runs, when people can come in just to visit, but if they want to adopt, there's a process that they need to go through as well. Can you describe that?
Sure. We realize that, reptiles are typically impulse purchases. And so are some of the tarantulas and things like that. And even the frogs. Well, they look pretty, so let's go get them. Nobody does the homework, and there's a lot of homework to be done. And if you tell people, oh, you have to research and all this, they're going to bypass you. Instead, what we created is a 3-part class, and the whole family participates. It's not just the child that wants the pet. It's the entire family is required to come. And they all learn about how to care for that animal, what the day-to-day picture looks like, because they're caring for that animal here, along with maybe 20, 30 others, depending on the species. And they're getting firsthand experience of what the poop smells, how messy it is to clean up. Because believe it or not, that's not something people think about when they go to get a pet. I mean, how many people go out and adopt a dog and don't think about the pooper scoopers, that they're going to need to clean up after them, and the litter box for the cats. That's not the side of it that you think about. But for a reptile, it's living in a limited environment, and that's something that has to be tended to daily for its health and the owner's health. And so we want them to understand that. The feeding of these animals is also not something where you can just go buy a dish of food at the pet store and stick it in the enclosure and they'll eat it. It's fresh foods that you have to fix, or it's frozen defrosted foods if it's a snake, and why it's important that you go that route and not go in and buy a live mouse or rat to feed to your snake. Aside from the humanity side of it, it's it is a detriment to the animal's health to be fed in captivity live food, live rodents, because the rodent is in a contained environment with the animal and it knows it's toast and it's going to do whatever it has to survive. And so you don't want to have that brutal lesson be something the family learns after taking the pet home and it's injured and now you're looking at hundreds or thousands in vet bills. So this class takes them through all of that. It takes them through the preparation of salads if the animal is a salad eater and what needs to go into it, what they can forage from outside in safe environments, whether it's their yard or a park or whatever, and what they can buy from the store to mimic the natural diet. So we really go in depth with that. And it gives them a chance to ask questions they never otherwise think of asking. And we've had a few families who have come to the realization that, you know what, this is a lot more work than we thought. And this is not the right animal for us. We actually had a 12-year-old boy tell us, gosh, right now it's not baseball season or soccer season, but when it gets to be those, I'm not going to have the time with practice and everything and clinics I go to take care of the animal. And my parents have already said it's my responsibility. So I'm not ready for this animal in my life right now.
Wow.
But
wow, that's a level of maturity I wish a lot of adults had.
Yeah. Oh gosh, isn't it? But it's getting them to realize this firsthand method of hands-on learning before you have the pet. And then if they're hesitant, but they still think they want to go that way, we have a foster option that we might be able to offer where they can try it out and see, does this really work? And so there's lots of different avenues that we're flexible to explore, but all of them ensure that the animal is going to either a foster home where it's getting one-on-one attention that it needs for its rehabilitation, or they're going to a permanent family that is going to be keeping them for the rest of their life. We have probably the lowest return rate of any rescue because of this education process. We've had 2 animals in our history returned to us. 2.
Wow.
One was because
incredible.
the son grew up and went off to college, and the other one was a family that we actually made an exception for because the dad had these as a kid and knew all about them. And he talked us into it. He was a smooth talker, and he talked us into letting them bypass the class. And sure enough, 6 months later, the animal came back.
Yeah.
And so never again will that happen. But it does make a difference. It's trying on with training wheels. It's pet ownership with training wheels, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And I I wish all organizations did that. I know that because there's such an influx of animals, especially now after COVID. And during COVID, everybody was so excited. Yay, Annie, aren't you so happy? All these people are adopting animals. And I was just like, no, I'm not. Because I know what's going to happen.
Yep.
I know it's going to happen after everybody goes to work. And lo and behold, it happened. All the animals got returned because people just didn't have the time anymore. And so I know there's such an influx of animals in rescue organizations that people just can't go through that process. But I love that you do that. I love that you do that. And that was one of the things I was going to ask you too is what's your return rate? And you answered that. It's 2 since you started doing this, which is really amazing. So you mentioned your daughter able to retain information better when there was an animal involved. Is that so? Your love for animals plus how you saw your daughter interacting with them, that's what really drove you to be where you are.
Yeah, I have several adopted children, and what I found, anytime you're going through an adoption, the kids have trauma. That separation from birth family is traumatic, even if it's at birth. And there's challenges that they face, whether it be anxiety or health issues or mental health issues, they come up. And I'm now raising a grandson. and he is on the spectrum. And today was a tough day for him because we had to put down a long time bearded dragon that he viewed as his dragon. We all have our favorite animals here, and we view them as ours. And this was the one, she would come home with us on days off when the museum was closed for home visits, and had an enclosure at home and everything. And it was really tough for him. And I was so proud of him. He took the flyers for the museum into school this morning with him after he said his final goodbyes to her, because she was in the car with us. And he said to the aide that came out to walk us into the classroom, he goes, "Here, take one of these. I have to hand these out because I have to bring awareness for my mom's company so that more animals can have good lives." And this is a 10-year-old child with autism, and he's learned that lesson already. And it just, I'm bursting with pride. And at the same moment, we're shedding tears in the passing of this animal. And yet I look at the impact she's had on his life. And that's huge, to understand that connection at his young age with his disabilities, and to realize that it takes other people knowing, not just us knowing, but getting the word out so that more awareness is brought, more help can be brought to the animals, because a lot of times our animals come in bad shape, and they have large, veterinary costs attached to their recovery and long-term costs. And I'm just amazed that he had that awareness. It wasn't something I taught in a lesson ever to him. During COVID, when he was home and schooling or in the museum. He grew up schooling in the museum for those years. Mm-hmm. But, it's something that he became aware of being in this environment. And he wants to share that with everybody. And I think, how much different would the world be if everybody understood the value of animals, and that they're lifelong companions? They're not temporary things that we have. And whether that's an animal that lives a couple years, like the rats, I know my kids had those growing up, and they were wonderful family companions and so precious. And, it doesn't matter what the animal is. We have, at the museum, we have 3-feeder goldfish that live here. Mm-hmm. That we had a snake that ate goldfish that had cancer, and it passed away before it ate the last of the fish. And they are now quite large. They were very tiny little things when we got them. Now they're quite large. And we call them the 3 little pigs, and they are growing to be monstrous. We're going to have to get them a bigger tank. But it's that understanding of that, just because the animal passed that would have consumed them, we don't just get rid of them. There are responsibility for their lives. And for a goldfish, that can be decades. Yeah. And so that is a lesson that we teach, because people always, why do you have fish? Well, funny story,
Yeah.
They were food and now they're not.
With goldfish, I think so many people, their experiences, I got them at the fair,
Yes.
Some fair. And they're, they haven't been really well taken care of, and they die the next day. And then to know that they can actually live for decades if you really invest the time, right? They can live a really, really long life.
And
so
and they get to know you. That's the other thing I was never aware of before. They recognize me the minute I come up the stairs. They're right there, and they recognize me, and they all come to the glass and greet me. It's really sweet in the morning. It's a nice way to start your day.
I knew a dog trainer who, she said when she was in college, she was really bored one night, and she was in her dorm, and she had been doing, practicing clicker training with dogs. But she decided, I'm going to train my beta fish. She had a beta in her room. And so she trained her beta by blowing bubbles. And so the bubbles in the water replaced the clicker, and then the beta would get a special treat. But she had through positive reinforcement, trained her beta to swim through a little hoop that was in
Oh, how cute.
the tank or wherever she held her. But she was just like, yeah, she goes, I just was thinking, oh, I'm going to see if this beta. And so she was able to, quote unquote, clicker train or bubble train her beta to swim through a hoop. And so, yeah, super, super smart. So, we had a chance a little earlier to talk about some of the challenges. And, there's sadness, and then
Yes.
there's joy, of course. And you mentioned that, just seeing your 10-year-old really having this deep understanding of life and talking to other people about that. What are some of the, I know this is probably a discussion we could have for a year, but just a couple of the biggest challenges that you have in saving lives?
I think the biggest challenge is so often the animals come in literally on death's door. The 3 animals we've lost this past month are all animals that came in on death's door. And we were able to make those recoveries and raise the money to get them the treatments they needed. But the long-term impact on the animal's organs and overall health is something we can't overcome. And getting to a point to accept that is really challenging. Covering the vet bills in the beginning is expensive. I mean, we have one lizard that we spent $3,000, and that's way over the cost of the animal. But that's what it cost to save her life. And she's still with us today. And hopefully it's an animal that can live 60 years. And she's not even in her teens yet. So, hopefully she'll be around for many years to educate. And she's an endangered species. So you look at that and you go, but we do the same thing for a leopard gecko. We do the same thing for a bearded dragon. And those are what some people refer to as throwaway pets because they're inexpensive or you can get them off free from Craigslist or wherever. And it's no animal is a throwaway. There is no such thing as that in my book. And I think the hardest thing is days like today when you get that phone call that one of the animals that you're close to has passed away, and you've done everything humanly possible, but the condition the animal came in took a toll on it, and ultimately years later led to its demise. And it doesn't make the loss any easier. And I think that is a side of a sanctuary and a rescue that people don't think about. And it's why we have such high burnout. We're really fortunate here. We're very open with each other. We're a small staff, and we all take it very personally when an animal passes, whether with assistance or on its own. And we talk through it. All of our animals have name cards. And if that was your special animal, you get the name card. And that's a memory. My son, my youngest, got to take the name card for Penelope for today, for the dragon. And it's our way of keeping a part of them with us.
That's such a wonderful way to honor not just the animal, but the care that the person felt for that animal. It's just such a wonderful way to honor both lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know today was a rough day for you, Susan. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry
Thank you.
about all that.
I appreciate that. But I looked back and what I said to my manager was, think about though if we weren't here for them, what they would have gone through. And they passed knowing love and a warm, safe home where they were well cared for, well fed, and knew only joy that we could give them.
Right.
And that they could share with the public. I look at all the kids that dragon touched in our reading program over the years. And while it's heartbreaking to lose her, the impact she had on those kids was huge. Some of them read for the first time because of her. And what a gift.
And this was Penelope, right?
That was Penelope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Princess Penelope, yeah.
So Susan, our time is almost over, but I would like you to share your contact information, because as a small nonprofit, you always need donations, and I would love for people who are in the area or not in the area, check out Animal Bond Academy and the EcoVivarium episodes, and you can always donate to Susan. So Susan, what's the best way for people to contact you and to donate?
Okay, they can reach us through our website. That is EcoVivarium, as in Mary.org, EcoVivarium.org, or they can call 760-975-9690. If we don't pick up, we may have an animal in our hands. Or
you're busy.
We're busy. We're a small crew and we wear lots of hats, but we will get back to you within 24 hours.
Okay. And I will also put this.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Annie.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Gosh, thank you for saving lives and doing everything you do. It's not an easy task. And I do want to say that I am going to put your information in the show notes as well, so that if people didn't hurry, scurry, and write it down, it'll be available. There'll be a link to your website as well. So thank you so much, Susan. We really appreciate it.